Okay, so welcome to this latest edition of ABNcast. My name is Lee Hayhurst. I am the editorial director of ABN, and I'm in the usual ABN studio in the offices here in North London. But I'm talking to somebody who actually we were meant to catch up at MRO Europe in London a few weeks back. But he was so busy doing business on his stand that unfortunately we had to leave it until after the show. So we thought we'd do it over Teams. So I'd like to welcome James Bennett to the show. James is the CCO of Aerfin. Welcome, James.
Hi, Lee. Good to meet you. Yes, I was too busy in meetings, so sorry for that. But
That's all right.
Great to have this conversation.
You're there to meet proper clients rather than the media. But so yeah, thanks for joining us today. Just as we start, then a lot of people will know Aerfin, but just give us an update on what Aerfin is, what you do, and your role in the company. Yeah, sure. So
I'm James Bennett, Chief Commercial Officer. Been with the business actually next July. I'll have been with the business for 10 years, and so I'll be looking forward to that anniversary. I have been, as I said, 10 years in the role. We, as Aerfin, we buy, sell, lease and repair aircraft, engines and parts to maximise the value for their owners and then provide a lower cost supply of material for our airline, our lessor, our OEM and our MRO customers. And my role is all around the business development of the business. I'm responsible for all the revenue streams, all the sales and profitability of the business on the piece part side, and ranging from long-term component support agreements to ad hoc parts trading.
And I know you're based in lovely Wales, just over the bridge there from Bristol. And I think, well, you're saying you've recently moved offices, or you're in newish offices.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, well, we'll probably come on to that a little bit later, but it's great to be in a kind of state-of-the-art facility that's we're all extremely proud of, and really well located. We're just over the border, not far from Bristol, as you say, and it just strengthens the connectivity, not just with the rest of the UK, but actually with the rest of the world. So it's great to be here.
Yeah, let's get into obviously the key topic for you is this the situation in the aftermarket. I think certainly during MRO Europe, there's a lot of talk about the rise in interest in USM because of the situation in the market, which we know is and has been talked about a lot. Yeah. So, but particularly in Europe, what are you seeing? What's the key trends you're seeing in Europe?
I think generally, and I was also at the MRO Singapore back in September, and I was at the MRO Americas earlier, and then the MRO Europe just recently, and it is interesting to see the perspective in all three, and there's very common themes. I mean, one thing I will say is that it is a buoyant aftermarket, very, very positive. If you think about just the underlying stats, the big numbers, that global MRO market is set to be circa $125 billion at the end of this year. There's different statistics, but broadly in that range, and that's up from 105 billion in 2024. Not all of that is COVID bounce. Okay, that's just how buoyant this market is, and within that, you've got then the growing demand for used serviceable material, and that's in and around, I think, between $8 and $9 billion. That's significantly increased from 5 or 6 where it was in 22, 23. So what's driving that? Lots of different things. The pressure on supply chain generally. I mean, we heard that actually in one of the breakout conference topics, the availability of inventory. We've got a constrained pipeline of feedstock, largely due to aircraft being extended for ongoing serviceability, ongoing flight, due to lack of available or the entry into service challenges from new aircraft. And then, of course, you've got the continuing pressure on driving lower cost solutions. And so that availability of inventory through USM channels, the engines, on the components, all that drives that demand for serviceable materials and life cycle solutions, which is really our forte.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk in London. People being asked to do the crystal ball, and when is this situation going to resolve itself? Is it here for the long, mid, or maybe there's some light on the horizon? But what's your view? I think mostly people felt we're in the situation really for the foreseeable, certainly midterm. There's no obvious solutions coming along. I think there's good news about Boeing getting back to some sense of hitting targets for deliveries, but even they're constrained still. I think it's only just hitting those. So What's your prognosis for the next, say, 5-10 years?
I think I heard the expression used quite a bit actually during the event, and a lot of people referring to it as using two words, saying it's kind of the new norm. Yeah. And so whether that is the case remains to be seen. But I do see this. I remember when this supply chain challenge was initially discussed, which all obviously came through COVID. Talk of, well, within 2 or 3 years we'll be back to some sort of normal, and I'm not really seeing that. I'm not really seeing the availability of inventory, whether it be through new manufacture. The supply chain challenges on a component repair level are still there, and even the bigger organizations are acknowledging that may be here for some time to come. And so what's key, I believe, is how the companies that are in this space respond to that. And I can certainly talk to what we're doing specifically to respond to that. And for us, at least, it's about what more can we do, given that's the backdrop. What more can we do to maximize the life and value of assets? And we're doing that through strategic teardowns and also a broadening of our asset type acquisition. So I would have been sitting here, Lee, a few years ago talking about us being a narrow body and regionally jet focused organization. And yet in the last 2 years, such has been the challenge out there in the market, we've acquired 60% of all the A330s that have come to market. 777s, which you may have seen also announced through 2025. Yep. And that's alongside the core investment strategy of narrow body and regional. So we're very much now in a wide body, narrow body and regional jet space. And that's because we want to give our customers as much choice as they can to help to operate at a better cost point. And a couple of other points around that. So I think we just touched on the move to this new facility, and that's a significant strategic move for us. It's expanding our engine disassembly capability and capacity. Right. So not just are we supporting from a component support perspective through the assets that we acquire, but we've got 26 engine bays here now. That's up to 200 engine events in a year. And alongside that MRO light strategy, as we're coining it, where we're turbocharging our presence in the 3 regions and continue to build those teams. And so we've got offices now in Singapore. We've got a 35,000 square foot facility in Miami. And we can very much talk about being a global business because customers all over the globe need the support. And so, that's probably pretty much where we're at and how we're responding to the challenge.
I guess that's the key thing is if you can operate more efficiently and effectively, and that can come from scale, obviously, and you can pass that on to your customers, because at the point at which you're trying to acquire the material, there's very little supply and a lot of demand out there, which obviously just naturally pushes prices up. How are you finding that battle for the stock material in the first place? Because as you said, you've got 2 things happening. You've got aircraft being flown for longer and leases being extended, but you've got parts hoarding as well going on, so that people are nervous about allowing or selling on parts just in case they need them. So you've got a kind of double whammy there, haven't you?
Yeah, I think that's right. But again, we've got a track record of acquiring assets. We have done right from day one when the business was founded in 2010. We've always acquired whole assets. So the confidence that gives our end users when you're able to go in and talk about a pipeline of assets that you've got is really, really powerful. And not just buying assets, but also buying assets at scale. Sub-fleets and fleets. Once you're in conversations and dialogue with the supportive shareholders that we've got, with customers or with potential acquisition targets, and you're able to talk about the acquisition of 5, 10, 15 aircraft and engines, it becomes a very different conversation. And then the competitive angle, then there's not many parties that are in a position to be able to do that, such as the technical challenges that poses, the commercial challenges that can pose. And so when you're acquiring, as I've said, 60% of the A330s that are coming to market, you're putting yourself in a pretty different space, and you're able then to talk with some confidence about the leverage you can bring then to your customers. So that's how we've responded to that ability to say, okay, if there's 1s and 2s coming to market, can we be successful? Well, we can, but we're more successful when we're looking at assets at scale, technical complexity, difficult jurisdictions, possibly. That's where I believe we stand apart.
I was just thinking about, you mentioned the supply chain issues post-COVID. Looking back, do you think that had COVID not happened, we'd still be feeling these supply chain challenges, or sort of dealing with them in a different way? Did just COVID just bring this to a head, and maybe exposed difficulties that were there anyway that maybe wouldn't have been addressed?
Possibly. I certainly, when you talk to colleagues across the industry, and they'll talk about brain drain. Okay, that's sort of crude expression maybe, but a lot of people who during COVID, whether they were let go by organizations, whether they decided it's pretty volatile, so maybe we'll step back. But we lost a lot of experience during that time. And I think even pre-COVID, where I would agree with you, there was already a concern about the amount of technicians we were going to need in our industry within the next 5 to 10 years. Numbers banded about of 200,000 shortage when we get to sort of 2030, 2035. There was an element of that was still there, and I think that's been accelerated. And so we've now got a situation where we're referring to this situation be more of a new norm. We've lost experienced individuals, difficult to replace. And so, yes, it's probably accelerated that concern that we now have within the market.
You were saying before we started, actually, that recruitment-wise, being where you are based, you are actually having a lot of success sucking people in from over the bridge from Bristol,
over the bridge,
where there's also a sort of a very vibrant aviation hub as well. So you're finding, and probably the new facility helps with that as well. A nice workspace probably helps.
It absolutely does, and there's no question that the ability to tap into, quite rightly, Bristol, which is in itself an aviation hub, is allowing us to attract talent. And we've made significant, well, you've only got to look at our results and the broadening of our customer base, the supercharging of the regions where we're now positioned as a business. We are a very attractive proposition, whether you're in Wales or we're enticing people from the other side of the bridge to come into this beautiful country. So that's part of a strategic initiative as well. So yeah, it's great. And I think what we're able also to do, and I think this is another shift for us when I mentioned the narrow body focus and then complemented with the wide body. But we've recently, as you've probably seen, Lee, announced the teardown of 6-year-old neo assets as well. So it puts us in a very different space, and I think I think that's the kind of thing that starts to appeal to people, is when they see the quality of the environment that we're in and the type of acquisitions and business model that we're now following. It's pretty exciting times.
That as you mentioned, that tearing down of 6-year-old neo aircraft. If you talk to anybody outside of aviation and say, you do realise this is happening in aviation, they can't quite believe it. It's quite something, isn't it? Really. What do we read into that? What's happening? Yeah,
well, for us at least, we see this as it's really, really important. Okay, I mean, we've talked in the past. I think this space of the aftermarket has often been referred to as kind of end of life, where clearly the teardown of 6-year-old assets is not what you would describe as end of life. But I think for us at least, our customers rely on us for a few things. They rely on us for quality, for reliability, and for innovation. I think these acquisitions do exactly that. 90% of the NEO operator base are existing A320 CEO operators. Okay, and that's a market that we've been entrenched in for years. And it's a natural evolution for us, really. They need access to materials for the next generation, not just the legacy aircraft. And I think part of this, again, is driven by the supply chain challenges, the shortage of engines to support new aircraft coming into production. And that's driving then the demand, not just for the high quality USM, of course, but also the engines themselves to keep that fleet flying. You've talked about this within your publication, Lee, around the GTF challenges. They're well known. And so what this is giving us is giving us optionality that we then pass to our customers. And just to kind of close the circular economy or close the cycle, each of those teardowns is releasing 1,000 or so parts, or high quality parts, then back into the market for reuse. So I think that's probably the context behind the teardown of the Neos.
Yeah, it is. As you said, it's with the Neos, it's very related to the engine type on the aircraft, and that does often determine the future of these aircraft. So there are some specific issues around that which are again are well known. It obviously, once you've got parts back into the market, the key then is getting those parts into the right place and you supply globally. So you've got that ongoing supply chain challenge after in the aftermarket. How are you? We just come back from Dublin, having done 2 days with our predictive aircraft maintenance conference.
Yeah.
And obviously, in a situation where predictive is becoming more important, the availability of parts when you need them, where you need them at that right time is increasingly important. So there's a growing challenge there, I would have thought, in the supply chain post teardown.
Yeah, there is, of course, and I think when you are acquiring your own assets, which is what we do, and you're acquiring them at scale, then you're always adding to the existing inventory pipeline that you've got. So if I look at what we've currently got in and around us with a circa $100 million worth or so serviceable inventory ready to go, we made sure that very early on, even during COVID, we were doing as much as we could to launch as much inventory as we could, knowing that we would see the bounce back of the market. And so it is about planning. It's about setting the right expectations with your customer base as well, and all of that as well in the context of what we're trying to do in a sustainable manner. So for us, it's about planning. It's about setting the right expectation with your customers. And it's about being able to demonstrate a very strong pipeline of inventory that you've either got or that you know is coming behind you. If you were reliant solely on one or two assets here or there, then you would have a problem living up to your promise to your customers. But when it's at scale, you don't have that challenge.
I think one of the other things that when you talk to people who, again, aren't in aviation, they often, this is related to sustainability. They often see pictures of aircraft sat in deserts, and they think that's where aircraft go to die. They really don't understand how much of an aircraft, when it comes to people like you, can be recycled, repurposed, and put back into the market. Once they realise it's a high percentage of the actual physical nature of an aircraft, it's pretty impressive stuff, and actually probably changes the dial in terms of what people's views are on the sustainability of the sector generally, because clearly it's not going to be sustainable in terms of burning oil for some time to come. But as long as it's doing what it can in this area, it can mitigate the impact it's having in on the operational side.
I think that's right. And for us, I mean, look, sustainability is essential to everything that we do, from the recycling. It's the business model, the recycling and the repair of inventory in and of itself that goes back into supporting operators, MROs, OEMs, lessors, leasing, whether that's a 6-year-old aircraft or a 20-plus-year-old aircraft. And reusing those parts, of course, reduces the requirement for new manufactured parts, which is kind of countering that challenge that we know exists in the industry, which is, of course, required to keep the world flying. We're also members of AFRA, the Aircraft Recycling Association, and that ensures that what cannot be reused or recycled is disposed of in a sustainable manner, which is really important. And all of that lends itself to maximising the operational life of aircraft parts. And what's becoming increasingly clear to me is whether it's RFPs coming from our customer base looking at component support, in each one of these RFPs, the request to demonstrate your sustainable credentials is becoming more and more important with every airline we engage with. So for us, it's at the heart of everything we do.
Yeah, we've spoken to AFRA a few times, and one of the key issues on this has been the recycling of composites in modern aircraft. And I know there's work going on. It's going to require a lot of R&D to work out what can be done there. I know you guys play a role in that as well. So the solutions will come from companies like Aerfin, won't they? Where do you see that going?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly that, isn't it? We just are focused on the business model that we have, which is we know that USM in and of itself is something that will increase in demand over the coming years. Okay, I do think that whilst the OEM new part manufacturer pressures will ease, such is the reliance on reducing the cost of operation, whether you are a financier, lessor, owner of aircraft, whether you are an operator of aircraft. That is at the heart of what is required to keep your aircraft flying at lowest possible cost point. So I see the work that's been done, whether it's on composites or on other material bases, is just going to continue to increase as the demand for USM will increase over the coming years.
I guess to take a broad picture of the industry, we're in a time when there really isn't an issue in terms of consumer demand, and if anything, there's too much. I mean, there can never be too much demand, and that's definitely a good thing. But the airlines are desperately trying to keep pricing, reasonable for people, because they don't want to price people out of the market. And so anything that can help them operate more effectively and efficiently is a good thing. And then the industry is recalibrating generally and becoming a more efficient industry. And that won't then go away very soon when we come out of this period. So actually a lot of work done today is for the long term. We'll come out of it a better industry, a more lean and effective industry. Is that how you see things sort of evolving?
I think that's right. We see consolidation as well, and that's probably been a theme of the last 20 years, but I can see more consolidation in the market. But when I reflect on the conversations we've had with customers, we went through a rebrand exercise last year, building around the pillars of confidence, reliability in particular. What we heard back from our customers was about trust. That's what they wanted, and they wanted a trusted partner in the aftermarket, and that was one of the central reasons for our rebrand, is talking to our valued business partners, whether it be on the supply chain side, whether it be on the customer side, and it was all around trust, and that's kind of where we centered our rebrand. Was all about the vision to become, which is where we currently are at, that vision to become the most trusted partner, because that's what the aftermarket needs, and for us, we're known for being agile, we're known for being reliable, and we like to operate as a partner. And I think when I reflect on the conversations I have when I go and meet many of our key customers, whether it be tier one airlines, OEMs themselves, who need USM support and solutions as well, MROs, we've always acquired, and I referenced this earlier, we've always acquired whole assets, aircraft, airframes, engines. And I can't underestimate the confidence that gives your customer when you can walk in there and show not just a history of acquiring whole assets, but also a pipeline as we go into 2026, which is where we are now, a pipeline of inventory that gives them that confidence in a partner they can trust. And that's what's really helped us to forge really strong relationships, not just with airlines and MROs on the provision side, but also then with leasing companies, financiers, asset managers, where we're acquiring assets from, who then know that we will be the ones that will support them with their asset exits, and provide them with a solution. So when you've got a track record of that, and then you're also scaling up and you're turbocharging your presence in regions and showing those regions you now have a commitment in that space, it just reinforces that point around how important trust is.
Yeah. There was a lot of companies talking trust at MRO Europe a few weeks back, and no doubt the work you've done on that meant that's why you were so busy and didn't have time to talk to us when you were there. So, which is a good thing. Again, just a final thought before we wrap up. As you said, we were meant to speak on your stand at MRO Europe. It's been a few weeks now. How do you feel the show went this year? It seemed pretty busy, particularly on the first day.
It was, really good. Again, as I mentioned at the start, it was pretty buoyant. I think, yes, we all know about those supply chain challenges. They were still coming up. And when you were talking to people about what's causing you concern or challenge, it was typically around the supply chain. But I definitely got a sense of optimism about what the future holds, particularly around the space of USM provisioning, aftermarket services and solutions. And for us, at least, when I think about what's next for us, I mean, really, not just off the back of MRO Europe, but obviously the quality of conversations that we were having was around, okay, well, what more can we do? And for us, it's pretty clear, actually. It's continuing to strengthen and broaden our customer network through growing regional teams. That's turbocharging what we're doing in Asia and in Americas in particular, where we're in many respects only really starting our journey now. We've had the facility that we opened in April 2024 in Miami, which really fully functional with inventory in sort of October. It's only really a year. Yeah. And then the sales and marketing office in Singapore for a similar length of time. So we're really only now tapping into both of those markets. And I'm really looking forward to what the future holds there, which then leads in turn to building deeper partnerships, continuing to unlock value with our customers, with our suppliers, with the financiers and the leasing community, and staying at the forefront of a smarter, more sustainable market. I mean, that's really the objective and roadmap for us.
Yeah. Well, look, it looks like you've got a big 2026 ahead. We'll no doubt hear a lot from you in that time, and we'll catch up again during the year, I'm sure. But for now, thanks for joining us on ABNcast, James. all the best for the future, and we'll speak again soon, I'm sure.
Thanks, Lee. Really appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
No problems.
Take care.